Captain Lee Daeho was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started screaming through the ship. The coffee cup fell from his hands and crashed to the floor as red lights flashed everywhere. His crew was already running to their stations before he could even stand up. The exploration ship New Sol had been traveling through empty space for 3 months looking for new planets and maybe new friends. They had found plenty of empty rocks and dead systems, but nothing exciting until today Lieutenant Park Jin-woo was staring at his screen with wide eyes. "Captain, the sensors are picking up massive ships coming our way really fast and really big." "How big?" asked Lee Daeho as he rushed to the bridge. "Sir, they are huge. Each ship is at least 5 times bigger than ours, and there are 12 of them. The weapons readings are off the charts. These ships are built for war and nothing else." Dr. Kim So-ra looked up from her translation computer. "Captain, I am getting signals from them. They are trying to communicate, but the language is unlike anything in our database. It sounds very harsh and angry." "Put it on speakers," ordered the captain. The bridge filled with deep growling sounds mixed with sharp clicking noises. It sounded like someone was trying to talk while eating rocks. The crew looked at each other with worried faces. Nobody had ever heard anything like this before. Dr. Kim So-ra worked frantically on her computer trying to find patterns in the alien language. Her hands were shaking as she typed, "Captain, I think I got some basic words. The main message seems to be a demand for something." "What kind of demand?" "Surrender, sir. They want us to surrender immediately, or they will destroy us. But there is something strange about their language, Captain. I cannot find any words for peace or friendship or negotiation in their entire communication system." Before anyone could respond, the alien ships appeared on the main screen. They were black and covered with spikes and weapon ports. The design looked like someone had built ships specifically to look scary and deadly. There was no beauty in them at all, just pure function for war. Suddenly, the largest ship sent a new message. This time, there was a visual component. A creature appeared on their screen that made everyone gasp. The alien was huge, at least 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor that looked like it grew from its skin. It had 4 arms ending in claws that could cut through steel. Its face was all sharp angles with glowing red eyes and teeth like daggers. When it spoke, its voice was like thunder. "I am Thrakvar, commander of the Vorthak battle fleet. You are small, weak creatures in a pathetic ship. We will give you 1 solar cycle to prepare for glorious battle. Then we will destroy you and take your ship as a trophy. This is the way of the Vorthak. We know only war and conquest. Prepare to die with honor if you can." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in complete silence. Everyone stared at the blank screen trying to process what they had just seen and heard. Captain Lee Daeho was the first to speak. "Can we outrun them?" Engineer Park, Min-ho checked his instruments. "No, sir. Their ships are much faster than ours, and we are too far from any human colonies to call for help. We are on our own." Dr. Kim So-ra looked up from her computer with a pale face. "Captain, I have been analyzing their language patterns more. The Vorthak literally have no concept of peace in their vocabulary. They have words for different types of war, different ways to kill enemies, different battle strategies, but nothing about friendship or cooperation or even basic negotiation." "What do you mean?" asked the captain. "Sir, their entire language is built around conflict. They have 50 different words for victory, but 0 words for compromise. They have detailed terms for every weapon imaginable, but no word that means friend. Their society appears to be structured entirely around warfare communications." Officer Han Yu-jin spoke up. "Captain, I tried sending diplomatic messages, but they just responded with more battle challenges. They keep asking us what weapons we prefer and how we want to die. They seem genuinely confused that we keep asking to talk instead of fight." Lee Daeho sat down heavily in his captain chair. 24 hours to live unless we can figure out how to communicate with creatures who only understand war. This is impossible. How do you make friends with someone who was literally built to kill?" The crew worked through the day trying different approaches. They sent mathematical formulas to show intelligence. The Vorthak responded by sending technical specifications for their weapons. They sent music hoping to appeal to emotions. The Vorthak sent back recordings of battle cries. They even sent pictures of Earth showing beautiful landscapes and peaceful cities. The Vorthak responded with images of conquered worlds burning under attack. Kim So-ra made a disturbing discovery as she dug deeper into their language patterns. Captain, I think the Vorthak are not a natural species. Their language structure suggests they were created or modified by someone else. Everything about them points to artificial enhancement, for warfare created by whom? Unknown, sir. But whoever did it removed their capacity for anything except fighting. They are like living weapons with just enough intelligence to be effective soldiers, but no ability to consider alternatives to violence. As the hours passed, the crew grew more desperate. They tried everything they could think of, but the Vorthak only responded to discussions about combat. They wanted to know what fighting style the humans preferred. They offered different types of weapons. They even suggested various ways the battle could be conducted to make it more interesting. But they could not understand why the humans kept refusing to fight. Engineer Park. Min-ho was working late in the engine room when he had a crazy idea. He ran to the bridge where Captain Lee Dae-ho was staring out at the Vorthak fleet. Captain, what if we try something completely unexpected? What do you mean, Min-ho, sir? The Vorthak have been programmed to expect certain responses from enemies. Either we fight back or we run away or we surrender. But what if we do something they have never encountered before? What if we do something so strange to them that it breaks their programming? The captain looked interested. Go on. What if instead of fighting them, we invite them over for dinner? The bridge went quiet. Everyone stared at Park Min-ho like he had lost his mind. Hear me out, said Min-ho quickly. They expect enemies. But what if we treat them like guests? They have no programming for that scenario. Their entire worldview is based on conflict, but what if we show them something that does not fit their understanding? What if we show them kindness? It is crazy enough that it might work, said Dr. Kim So-ra. If their minds are truly programmed only for war, then an act of pure peace might confuse them enough to create an opening. Captain Lee Dae-ho looked around at his crew. They were all young and scared but willing to try anything to survive. We have 18 hours left, he said quietly. Start preparing a feast. Mechanic Cho Sung-min had always been the funny guy on the ship. He made jokes when things got scary and found ways to make people smile even during the worst times. Now he was looking at the biggest challenge of his life. Thrakvar and his warriors had finished eating, but they were still sitting at the table looking confused. They kept staring at their empty plates like they could not believe what had just happened. The concept of enjoying food was still too new for them to understand. Cho walked over to the table carrying a small metal box. Captain Lee Dae-ho watched nervously as his mechanic approached the deadly alien warriors. What was Sung-min planning now? Commander Thrakvar said. Cho with a big smile. You look like a strong warrior. I bet you could beat any human in a contest of strength. Thrakvar looked up with interest. Finally, something he understood. Contests of strength were part of warrior culture. Of course I am stronger than any human. I could crush you with one hand. Great, said Cho, setting the metal box on the table. How about we test that? I challenge you to arm wrestling. But there is a special rule. What rule? Asked Thrakvar suspiciously. Warriors did not like rule changes in combat. The winner gets to brag about being strong, but the loser has to tell everyone about the most embarrassing thing that ever happened to them. The Vorthak warriors looked shocked. This was not how contests worked. The loser was supposed to die or at least suffer serious consequences, not tell funny stories. What is embarrassing? Asked one of the warriors. Something that makes you feel silly or awkward, explained Dr. Kim So-ra. Like when you make a mistake and other people laugh, but not in a mean way. The Vorthak had no word for embarrassment. In their language they had shame, which meant failure in battle, and dishonor, which meant cowardice. But the idea of making mistakes that were funny instead of deadly was completely new. Thrakvar studied Cho carefully. You are not afraid to lose, human. Most creatures fear losing to Vorthak warriors. Losing is not scary, said Cho. Actually, some of my best stories come from times when I messed up badly. People love hearing about my mistakes because they are really funny. This made no sense to Thrakvar. In his world, mistakes meant death. How could failure be entertaining? But the human seemed genuinely excited about the possibility of losing. "Fine," said Throckvar, placing one of his massive arms on the table. "I accept your strange challenge." The two competitors gripped hands, and Cho immediately realized he had made a terrible mistake. Throckvar was not just strong, he was incredibly strong. The alien could probably crush steel with his bare hands. 3, 2, 1, go, called out Captain Lee Dae-ho. The contest lasted exactly 2 seconds. Throckvar barely had to apply pressure before Cho's arm was pinned to the table. The human had lost so completely, it was almost embarrassing. But instead of looking defeated, Cho started laughing, a big, genuine laugh that filled the entire dining hall. He was holding his sore arm but grinning like he had just won a prize. "Well, that was predictable," said Cho cheerfully. "Now I owe you my most embarrassing story." Throckvar leaned forward, curious despite himself. "Tell me, human. Last year I was doing repairs on the outside of the ship," started Cho. "The safety cable was supposed to keep me attached, but I accidentally clipped it to my own belt instead of the ship. When I pushed away from the hull to get a better angle, I launched myself into space like a rocket." The crew started giggling. They had all heard this story before, but Cho always made it funnier with each telling. "There I was floating away from the ship, spinning like a crazy top and screaming for help over the radio. But the worst part was that I had packed a lunch in my tool bag, so while I am flying through space panicking about dying, my sandwich starts floating around my helmet by." Now the human crew was laughing hard. Even Dr. Kim So-ra was trying not to smile while she translated for the Vorthak warriors. The rescue team found me an hour later, still spinning, and still trying to catch my floating sandwich. When they pulled me back inside, the first thing the captain asked was whether I had finished my lunch. I was so embarrassed that I could not eat sandwiches for a month. Cho finished his story with a dramatic bow. The human crew applauded and cheered like he had just performed a great show. But all eyes were on Throckvar. The massive warrior was staring at Cho with an expression no one had ever seen before. His mouth was slightly open and there were strange sounds coming from his throat. At first it sounded like he was choking or having trouble breathing. Then they realized what was happening. Throckvar was laughing. It started as a low rumbling sound but grew louder and deeper. The other Vorthak warriors stepped back in alarm. They had never heard their commander make sounds like this. Laughter was not part of their programming. The absurdity of the story had broken through 3,000 years of conditioning. A warrior floating helplessly through space chasing a sandwich was so ridiculous that even a creature built for war could see the humor in it. "You were spinning," said Throckvar between laughs, "like a broken missile." "Exactly like that," said Cho. "And the sandwich kept bouncing off my helmet." Throckvar laughed harder. The image was so funny that he could not stop. The idea of a warrior being defeated by his own lunch was the most ridiculous thing he had ever heard. The other Vorthak warriors were looking scared. Their commander was making sounds they had never heard before. Was this some kind of human weapon that attacked the mind? But Throckvar was not in pain. He was experiencing joy for the first time in his life. The feeling was so new and powerful that he could not control it. Every time he thought about the floating sandwich, he started laughing again. Security Officer Bae Ji-won saw an opportunity. She pulled out a deck of cards and approached the table. "Would you like to learn a game, Commander? Something humans play for fun." "What kind of game?" asked Throckvar. Wiping strange moisture from his eyes, "It is called poker," explained Bae. "We try to get good cards, but we also try to trick each other about what cards we have. The best part is that lying is not only allowed, it is required. Lying is required." The Vorthak were trained to gather intelligence and mislead enemies, but the idea of lying for entertainment was bizarre. "You lie to your friends?" asked one of the warriors. "All the time," said Bae cheerfully. "That is what makes it fun. When someone tricks you with a really good lie, you congratulate them for being clever." This was another concept that broke their programming. Deception was supposed to be used against enemies, not friends. And when you were caught lying, you were supposed to be punished, not praised. Bae dealt cards to everyone and began explaining the rules. The Vorthak were natural strategists, so they understood the game quickly, but they struggled with the social aspects. When Cho bluffed about having good cards and won a hand, the Vorthak expected him to be punished for deception. Instead, everyone laughed. and said he was getting good at the game. When Thrakvar tried to bluff but was obviously lying, the humans did not attack him for dishonor. They just smiled and called his bluff, then explained how he could lie better next time for creatures who had been programmed to see everything as life or death combat. This casual approach to competition was revolutionary. They were playing a game where losing was acceptable, lying was encouraged, and everyone was having fun. The card game continued. Thrakvar found himself looking forward to losing hands just to hear what ridiculous stories the humans would tell. He was beginning to understand that there were ways to interact with other beings that did not involve violence. The sound of his own laughter was becoming familiar, and he liked it more each time. Okayed for aliens before, but she was determined to make the best meal of her life. She worked through the night in the ship's kitchen, preparing dishes that might appeal to creatures who had only known war for thousands of years. Her hands shook as she seasoned the roasted meat. She had no idea what the Vorthak could eat or what would poison them, but the ship's computer had analyzed their biology and made some educated guesses. They were carnivores with powerful digestive systems. So she focused on rich protein dishes with bold flavors. Captain Lee Dae-ho watched her work with growing anxiety. "Yang, are you sure about this? We only get one chance. If the food makes them sick or angry, we are all dead, chef." Yang wiped sweat from her forehead. "Captain, I have been cooking for 20 years. I know how to make food that brings people together. Food is the universal language of care and friendship. Even if they do not understand our words, they will understand that someone worked hard to make something good for them." The dining hall had been transformed overnight. The crew had moved tables and chairs around to accommodate the massive Vorthak warriors. They had even found extra-large chairs from the cargo bay and reinforced them to hold the weight of armored aliens. The room was decorated with simple flowers from the hydroponics bay and soft lighting to make it feel welcoming instead of threatening. Dr. Kim So-ra was still working on her translation computer, trying to learn more Vorthak words. She had discovered that their language had hundreds of terms for different types of meat and cooking methods related to battlefield meals, but no words for hospitality or welcome dinners. The Vorthak ships moved closer as their deadline approached. Captain Lee Dae-ho stood on the bridge watching the alien vessels grow larger on his screen. Each ship bristled with enough weapons to destroy a small moon, but today he was hoping they would be used to cut food instead of enemies' communications. Officer Han Yu-jin received the expected message. Captain Thrakvar is demanding permission to board for what he calls the pre-battle inspection. He says this is traditional before destroying weak enemies. "Tell him he is welcome aboard for dinner," said the captain, ignoring the shocked looks from his crew. "Tell him we have prepared a feast in his honor." There was a long pause before Han Yu-jin looked up. "Captain, he is asking what a feast is." His translator is having trouble with the concept. "Just tell him we have prepared food and we want to share it with him." The docking bay doors opened and the crew held their breath as the Vorthak shuttle approached. It was sleek and deadly looking like everything else about their species. When it landed, with a heavy thud, the whole ship seemed to shake. Security officer Bae Ji-won and her team were positioned around the dining hall, but their weapons were hidden. They had orders to protect the crew but also to avoid any action that might seem threatening. To their guests, the plan was to appear completely defenseless and friendly. The airlock doors slid open and Thrakvar stepped through, followed by 6 of his warriors. The humans had seen him on screen, but in person, he was even more intimidating. His armor was scarred from countless battles and his claws were stained dark from old blood. His red eyes swept the corridor looking for traps or ambush points. Captain Lee Dae-ho stepped forward with his hands visible and empty. "Welcome aboard the new Soul Commander Thrakvar. We are honored by your visit." Thrakvar stopped walking and stared at the human captain. This was not the behavior he expected from enemies about to die. "Where are your weapons? Human. Where are your defenses? Why do you not cower in fear?" "We are not here to fight," said Lee Dae-ho calmly. "We are here to share a meal. Please follow me." The Vorthak commander looked confused. His warriors behind him were equally puzzled. They kept looking around for hidden dangers or secret weapons, but found only humans who seemed genuinely happy to see them. Dr. Kim So-ra approached, carefully speaking in her broken Vorthak honored warrior. We have prepared food for you. It is our custom to share meals with new friends. Thrakvar tilted his massive head. Friends. What is this word? Friends, I do not understand. Someone you care about, explained. Dr. Kim Sora. Someone you want to help and protect. Someone you enjoy spending time with. The Vorthak warriors exchanged glances. This concept was completely alien to them. They had allies in battle and enemies to destroy, but the idea of caring about someone without any combat purpose made no sense. The group reached the dining hall and Thrakvar stopped in the doorway. His mouth fell open, revealing rows of sharp teeth. The room was filled with the smell of cooked meat and spices. Tables were set with plates and cups and chairs that looked like they had been specially prepared for Vorthak bodies. Chef Yang Hyejin emerged from the kitchen carrying a massive platter of roasted meat. She had prepared it with a spicy sauce that the computer suggested might appeal to their enhanced senses. When she saw the towering alien warriors, she felt a moment of fear, but pushed it down, and smiled. Welcome, she said in simple Vorthak. I made this for you. I hope you like it. Thrakvar stared at the platter like it might explode. This human female had spent time and effort creating something specifically for him. Not as tribute from a conquered enemy, but as a gift from someone who wanted him to enjoy it. The concept was so foreign that his brain struggled to process it. Please sit, said Captain Lee Dae-ho, gesturing to the reinforced chairs. The Vorthak warriors looked to their commander. For guidance, Thrakvar was still staring at the food, trying to understand what was happening. Finally, he moved to one of the chairs and carefully sat down. The chair groaned under his weight, but held Chef Yang placed a plate in front of him loaded with perfectly cooked meat, vegetables, and a small cup of sauce for dipping. She had even carved the meat into bite-sized pieces since she was not sure how the Vorthak ate their food. Thrakvar picked up a piece of meat with his claws and examined it closely. It smelled amazing, unlike anything he had experienced. The spices were complex and appealing. His enhanced senses could detect layers of flavor that had been carefully balanced. He put the meat in his mouth and chewed slowly. His eyes widened as the flavors hit his tongue. This was not the bland military rations he was used to or the raw flesh of defeated enemies. This was something created with skill and care, specifically to be delicious. The other Vorthak warriors watched their commander. Nervously. They had never seen him react to food this way. Thrakvar took another bite and then another. His expression changed from confusion to wonder, to something that might have been happiness. Human, he said to Chef Yang, looking directly at her. What is this food? She replied simply. I cooked it for you because I wanted you to have something good, but why would you do this for an enemy? You are not my enemy, said Yang, smiling. You are my guest. Thrakvar felt something strange happening in his chest. His heart was beating faster, but not from battle excitement. It was something else, something he had no name for. The human had worked to create pleasure for him, expecting nothing in return. This was completely outside his understanding of how the universe worked. The other warriors began to eat as well, and their reactions were similar. The food was unlike anything in their experience, rich, flavorful, and made with obvious care. It was the first thing any of them had ever consumed that was created purely for enjoyment rather than survival. For the first time in his long life of endless warfare, Thrakvar began to question whether there might be something in the universe besides conquest and death. Communications officer Han Yu-jin had been watching the Vorthak warriors carefully during the card games. She noticed something interesting about the way they reacted to sounds. Their heads would turn at the smallest noise, and their eyes would focus with incredible intensity. Commander Thrakvar, she said during a break between poker hands, I have noticed that your hearing is much better than ours. Of course, replied Thrakvar. We must hear enemies approaching from great distances. We can detect sounds that would be impossible for your weak human ears. That is amazing, said Han. Would you like to experience something that humans created specifically for advanced hearing? Something we call music, asked Thrakvar. What is this music? It is organized sound that creates feelings, explained Han. Humans make music to express emotions or to tell stories without words. The Vorthak warriors looked confused. They understood battle cries and communication signals, but the idea of sound, created, purely for emotional purposes, was foreign to them. Han pulled out a small device and connected it to the ship's sound system. I will start with something very simple and gentle. She selected a soft lullaby that human mothers sang to their babies. The melody was sweet and peaceful with no harsh notes or sudden changes. It filled the dining hall with gentle harmonies. The reaction from the Vorthak was immediate and shocking. Thrakvar dropped his cards and gripped the table with all four hands. His red eyes went wide and his breathing became rapid. The other warriors also looked distressed, like they were in physical pain. "Stop it," one of them shouted. "This sound, it hurts." Han quickly turned off the music. "What is wrong? Are you injured?" Thrakvar was staring at nothing, his massive body trembling. "Something is wrong with my mind." The sound created images, pictures that should not exist. "What kind of pictures?" asked Dr. Kim. "Sora moving closer. Small Vorthak." He whispered. "Children playing in gardens. Green places with flowing water structures made for beauty instead of war. But this is impossible. Our children are born in military breeding facilities. There are no gardens on our worlds." The other warriors were nodding with frightened expressions. They had all seen the same impossible visions triggered by the simple human lullaby. Han looked at Dr. Kim Sora with excitement. "This could be genetic memory," she said. "Music might be awakening memories from before they were modified for war." Dr. Kim Sora ran to her computer and began searching through the Vorthak language database. "Commander, can you describe these images in more detail?" "There were Vorthak, but they looked different," said Thrakvar slowly. "Their armor was not natural. It was decoration. Their claws were used for carving beautiful objects, not weapons. There were sounds like your music, but made by Vorthak voices." Han felt her heart racing. If music could trigger these buried memories, maybe it could help the Vorthak remember who they used to be. "Would you like to hear more music, Commander? But this time I will prepare you for what might happen." Thrakvar was quiet for a long moment. The visions had been disturbing but also strangely pleasant. The images of peaceful Vorthak felt more real than his entire life of warfare. "Yes," he said finally. "I want to understand these pictures in my mind." Han selected a different piece this time, a simple melody played on wooden flutes. It was the kind of music that made humans think of quiet, forests, and peaceful afternoons. Again, the Vorthak reacted strongly, but this time they did not ask her to stop. Thrakvar closed his eyes and let the music wash over him. More images filled his mind. "I see Vorthak creating things," he said with wonder. "Sculptures and paintings and structures that serve no military purpose. They are making beauty for the joy of creation." One of his warriors spoke up. "Commander, I see the same images, but also I see Vorthak singing together. Their voices joining in. Harmony like this human music." "This is impossible," said another warrior. "We have always been soldiers. Our creators made us for war only." "But what if that is not true?" asked Dr. Kim Sora. "What if you were once a different people and someone changed you? What if your creators took a peaceful species and modified them into weapons?" The idea was revolutionary and terrifying. The Vorthak had always believed they were created specifically for warfare, but the music was unlocking memories that suggested a completely different origin. Han played more music over the following hours. Each piece brought new visions and new memories. The Vorthak saw images of their ancestors living in harmony with nature, creating art and literature and philosophy. They saw Vorthak families where children were loved and protected instead of trained for battle. The most powerful moment came when Han played a piece of choral music, human voices singing together in perfect harmony. When the Vorthak heard it, something amazing happened. Thrakvar began to hum. It started as a deep rumbling sound that matched the rhythm of the human voices, but gradually it became a melody. The other warriors looked shocked. Their commander was making musical sounds. The humming grew. Stronger and more confident, other warriors began to join in. Their voices were much deeper than human voices and had a resonant quality that made the air vibrate. Soon, all 7 Vorthak were humming together, creating harmonies that blended with the human music. The sound was beautiful and powerful, like nothing anyone had ever heard before. Tears were running down Thrakvar's face. He had tear ducts like all Vorthak, but had only used them to clear debris during combat. Now they were flowing, freely as emotions he had no names for overwhelmed him. We were singers, he said in amazement. We were artists and creators. The warrior programming was added later. Someone took our true nature and buried it under layers of violence and aggression. Dr. Kim Sora was working frantically to create new words in the Vorthak language, words for concepts they had forgotten. Beautiful, peaceful, creative love. Joy, wonder, as the music session continued. The Vorthak began to remember more details they recalled. Their original homeworld before it was turned into a military base. They remembered festivals and celebrations where music and art were central to their culture. Most importantly, they began to understand that their current existence was not natural. It was an artificial constraint imposed by whoever had modified them into living weapons. Thrakvar stood up suddenly and looked at Captain Lee Dae-ho. Human captain, your people have given us something incredible. You have shown us who we really are underneath the programming. What will you do with this knowledge? Asked Lee. Dae-ho, first we must share it with our fleet, said Thrakvar. If music can awaken these memories in us, it can awaken them in all Vorthak. But I fear our leaders will not want to hear this truth. Why not? Because if we are not natural warriors, then our entire civilization is built on a lie. Our supreme commander and all our military leaders derive their power from the belief that we exist only for war. If we discover we were meant for something else, it changes everything. Han Yu-jin stepped forward. Commander, would you like me to teach you more human songs? You could learn them and share them with your people? Thrakvar nodded eagerly. Yes, but also I want to try, remembering our own music, the songs from before we were changed. Over the next several hours, the dining hall filled with an incredible sound. Humans and Vorthak singing together, creating new harmonies that neither species had ever imagined. The Vorthak voices were deep and resonant while the human voices provided higher melodies as they sang together. Thrakvar felt something he had never experienced before, a sense of connection and unity that had nothing to do with military discipline or battlefield cooperation. This was genuine friendship based on shared joy and mutual respect. The music had awakened more than just memories. It had awakened the possibility that the Vorthak could choose a different path. But first they would have to convince their own people that warriors could become something more. The alarms on every Vorthak ship in the fleet started screaming at the same time. Supreme Commander Gorthak Prime stood on the bridge of his massive war vessel staring at his sensor readings in complete disbelief. What is that sound coming from? The human ship, he demanded. His communications officer looked terrified. Supreme Commander, it appears to be singing. But the voices include Vorthak, warriors Gorthak. Prime felt his blood turn cold in his veins. Vorthak did not sing. Vorthak fought and conquered and died with honor. But they never ever sang. The very idea was an abomination against everything their species represented. Bring me visual contact with the human vessel immediately, he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the exterior of the small human ship. But something was wrong. The ship was decorated with colorful banners and lights like some kind of celebration was taking place, and the singing was getting louder. Through the hull sensors they could hear multiple Vorthak voices joined with human voices creating harmonies that should not exist. The sound was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Beautiful because it touched something deep in every Vorthak heart. Terrible because it meant their warriors had been corrupted by alien influence. Prepare my personal shuttle, ordered Gorthak Prime. I will board that ship and execute Thrakvar for treason against the warrior code. But Supreme Commander said his second in command. Perhaps we should simply destroy the ship from a distance. Whatever has infected our warriors might spread to us. No, replied Gorthak Prime grimly. I will see this corruption with my own eyes before I cleanse it with fire. The docking bay of the human ship had been transformed since Thrakvar first arrived. Now it was filled with decorations made by human children, drawings showing humans and Vorthak playing together, working together, and creating art together. The images were simple but powerful, showing a future where the two species were friends instead of enemies. When Gorthak Prime stepped off his shuttle with 6 elite guards, he stopped dead in his tracks. The walls were covered with these innocent pictures children had drawn. Vorthak warriors, gardening teaching, music to human kids and building beautiful structures together. "What is this madness?" he whispered. Captain Lee Dae-ho approached with a warm smile. "Supreme Commander Gorthak Prime, welcome aboard the New Soul. We are honored to meet you. Commander Thrakvar has told us so much about you." "Where is Thrakvar?" demanded Gorthak Prime. "What have you done to my warriors?" "Nothing," replied Lee Dae-ho. "Honestly, we have simply shown them friendship. They are in the dining hall, sharing a meal with my crew. Would you like to join them?" Gorthak Prime stormed through the corridors following the sound of singing and laughter. His guards were looking around nervously at all the cheerful decorations. This was unlike any enemy ship they had ever boarded. The dining hall. Doors opened and Gorthak Prime saw something that made his mind struggle to process reality. Thrakvar was sitting at a table with humans playing some kind of card game. Everyone was laughing, including his warriors. His lieutenant was teaching a human child how to carve wood with his claws while the child showed him how to draw pictures with colored pencils. But most shocking of all, they were singing together. Human and Vorthak voices blending in perfect harmony, creating music that filled the room with joy and peace. Thrakvar roared Gorthak Prime. "What is the meaning of this disgrace?" Thrakvar looked up from his cards with the expression his commander had never seen before. He looked happy. Genuinely, completely happy. "Supreme Commander, you have arrived just in time for the celebration." "Celebration? What celebration? There is nothing to celebrate here except your upcoming execution for abandoning the warrior code." Thrakvar stood slowly and faced his superior. "We are celebrating the discovery of who we really are. Supreme Commander, the humans have shown us memories we thought were lost forever. We were not always warriors. We were artists and creators and singers." "Lies," hissed Gorthak Prime. "You have been poisoned by alien deception. We were created for war. We exist for conquest. Nothing else matters." Dr. Kim Sora stepped forward, holding her translation device. "Supreme Commander, would you like to hear the music that awakened these memories? Perhaps you will see the same visions your warriors experienced." "Never. I will not listen to alien corruption." But Han Yu-jin had already started playing the same lullaby that first triggered Thrakvar memories. The gentle melody filled the dining hall, and immediately Gorthak Prime reaction was violent. His hands flew to his head and he staggered backward. "No," he shouted. "Stop this weapon." But it was too late. The music was already working its way into his consciousness. Images flooded his mind. Vorthak children playing in gardens instead of training for battle. Vorthak adults creating beautiful sculptures and paintings. Vorthak families living in peace and harmony. The visions were so powerful that Gorthak Prime fell to his knees. Tears streamed down his face as memories buried for millennia came rushing back. He saw his own ancestors before they were modified into weapons. He saw what his people had been before they became living instruments of destruction. "This cannot be real," he whispered. But even as he spoke, he knew the visions were true. They felt more real than his entire life of warfare. Thrakvar knelt beside his commander and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Supreme Commander, we were lied to. Our creators took a peaceful species and turned us into weapons, but we can choose to be something else. We can remember who we were meant to be." One of Gorthak Prime elite guards was also affected by the music. He was staring at his claws in wonder. "I remember carving," he said softly. "These were for creating beauty, not destroying life." The transformation spread through the room as more Vorthak heard the music and experienced the awakening. Each warrior went through the same process: shock, denial, acceptance, and finally joy, as they rediscovered their true nature. Chef Yang Hee-jin brought food for the newcomers, and they experienced the same revelation that Thrakvar had felt. Someone had created something beautiful just for their enjoyment. The concept of generosity without conquest was foreign, but wonderful, Captain. Lee Daeho saw his opportunity. Supreme Commander, your people and mine could work together. We could help you remember your original culture, while you help us explore the galaxy with your strength and knowledge. But what about our fleet? Asked Gorthik Prime. Weakly, they will not understand this change, they will see it as weakness. Then we teach them, said Thrakvar confidently. Music awakened us. It can awaken them too. We share the songs and the memories and the food and the friendship. Eventually, they will all remember what we have forgotten. Over the following days, something unprecedented happened in galactic history. An entire Vorthak battle fleet was converted not through conquest or force, but through the simple power of human kindness. Ship by ship, Vorthak warriors were invited aboard the New Soul to experience music, food, games, and friendship. Each group went through the same transformation as their buried memories awakened. The change was not instant. Many Vorthak struggled with the concept of existing for something other than war. But as they heard their own ancestral songs and tasted food, made with love, and learned to laugh at silly stories, they began to understand that there was more to life than endless battle. Within a month, the entire fleet had been transformed. The Vorthak declared the first peace treaty in their 3,000-year history. They established a colony on a nearby planet dedicated to rediscovering their lost arts and culture. Human teachers worked alongside Vorthak warriors who were learning to use their strength for building instead of destroying Vorthak. Artists began creating sculptures and music that expressed their newfound emotions. Human children played with young Vorthak, learning that differences in appearance meant nothing when hearts were open to friendship. The galaxy watched in amazement as the most feared warrior species in known space laid down their weapons and picked up paintbrushes. The transformation sent shockwaves through every civilization. Some were inspired by the possibility of change. Others were terrified that their own warrior cultures might be similarly awakened. But for the crew of the New Soul and their new Vorthak friends, the future looked brighter than ever. They had proven that even the most hardened hearts could be opened with patience, kindness, and the universal language of friendship. The species built for war had chosen to become builders of peace. And it all started with a simple meal, shared between strangers who decided to become friends.